And here we go. We are live. Welcome to another episode of Labs Talk. Hi, Andreas.
Hey, Sven. It's a long time no talk, right?
Yeah, it was a long vacation for both of us, actually, right? So,
Yeah.
what have you been doing?
I wonder what we've been bicycling together. We spent a lot of time in the Alps.
Yeah.
Did a proper workout 6 days in a row. I had another week of vacation before that, and in total, it's been like probably 4 weeks since we recorded. Right? It's definitely
Yeah,
been a
probably.
while.
And the last one was with Stefan. I remember that, right? And we had a little bit of an outage, I believe, with the video. So the audio was good, but I think the video was kind of missing for 1-2 minutes or so. But
Yeah, indeed.
hey,
Like while we had this high-profile guest, the glitch, we may need to redo that. It's a different
for
story.
everybody who's watching this, right, and who doesn't know who's Stefan Wagner is the head of SAP Labs Germany. So at least for us here, it's quite important that we get this right. So we might re-record this at some point when he's back in Munich. Yeah.
And with that, we do it right. But today we're going back to technology. We go outside of SAP. We do talk about the important stuff today again. We do have a important guest today. I'm really excited to have him today and to talk about the topics. When I understand you already did an episode for another project of yours for Kids Talk that you did many years
Kids
back.
Talk.
Yeah,
Kids Talk is nice, actually.
it was called Kids Talk,
So
right?
The podcast that I was doing for pretty much 1 year straight every week or so. I'm not sure how I made that, actually, but for 1 year every week, I was recording for the Kids Lab podcast, if I'm correctly informed. And Dale was already a speaker on that podcast, and we discussed his project, which is called ML for Kids. And I think at that point in time, we really talked about mainly ML and the importance of ML. And then, looking into the history, basically, since then, now we have LLMs, Gen AI. Nobody almost speaks about ML anymore, right? But he's, I guess, also an expert on Gen AI. But I find it totally amazing how we basically move from, I would say, a field and a topic where I would say I still understood how it works, right? The training of these models and then usage of the models, it was also clear, into this agentic space and agentic time that we have, where everything seems to be moving again tenfold faster, I believe, right? So let's bring Dale on, actually, and let's ask him directly. So hello and welcome, Dale. How are you?
Hey, good. Thanks for having me.
Very cool.
Dale, now that you guys know each other, shall we just start off? Dale, maybe welcome to the show, but maybe here's your opportunity. Introduce yourself. Tell us what is your background? What did you talk about when you met for this Kids Lab podcast? And what are why did we invite you for this?
Well, you should know that, right? So
yeah,
we should know that.
I'm a developer for IBM. I have spent a fair bit of time working in what we call our Watson division. That's the branding we give for our AI platform. And I guess all of this stuff for me, the ML for Kids stuff, started from me trying to explain what I was doing at work to my kids and them not really getting it. So I experimented with different ways of trying to explain it to them. And the one that worked was in the school holidays, I got them to build something with the AI platform that I worked on. And suddenly the penny dropped, by touching it and using it and building with it, they got it. And everything kind of snowballed from there. Like that idea of kids can understand things if you give them a chance to play with this tech in a safe sandbox. That was where it all started. And yeah, like you heard, that was years ago now, focusing on things like classifiers and more traditional ML.
I just wanted to go into there, actually, right? So when you said the penny dropped, it must have been with something that's probably sorting pictures or sorting pieces of text into good and bad or red and green and something like that, right? So something I also basically at some point learned about ML, and then I remember we had these Google experiments where you could also upload a couple of pictures quickly, right, and train your own ML model and things like that. I found that all fairly understandable, to be honest with you. But in today's time, when you look into Gen AI, um, sometimes I think the chats that you're having with the AI almost feel human-like, basically, right? So it feels like, and I guess for someone who's learning, who's someone who's just basically going to school, for example, right? If you want to start with kids, actually, that must feel crazy, right? Because you don't really see the technology behind it, and it seems it's an open-ended system that's capable of doing anything. So I'm not sure if that's too direct already, but how would you explain? I mean, let's start with how do you explain LLMs basically and what's happening today?
It is hard, and I don't think that's just about kids. Like, I think it's hard for all of us.
Yeah.
Like they're getting so complex now that holding that intuition in your head is difficult. The general approach that I've been using in the classrooms are essentially Markov chains. So the idea of focusing on language models as a statistical engine for guessing the most likely next word. And
Mhm.
and I like that because that's something that kids can build for themselves. Like you can build a Markov chain, which is like a rough analog of how a language model works for yourself with text that you create. Um, I create visualizations to show them so they can see, this word has showed up in the text I collected this many times. Of the number of times this word showed up, this word came next 10 times, this word came next 8 times. So if I go with the one that came the most, it's the equivalent of like on our phone keyboards where it would predict the most likely next word. It's like that's the kind of game you get kids to play of. If
Yeah.
you just keep accepting the most common next word, what happens? And then you iterate on that. You start to introduce other ideas like temperature, where you don't always take the most common next word. You add a bit of randomness. You pick from maybe the top 10, top 20 most common next words.
Yeah.
But yeah, that intuition of from a large amount of text, what word comes next most often, use that as the basis of generating text one word at a time.
Very cool. So let's then maybe focus. I think in the pre-chat we said we want to kind of discuss the various groups one by one, kind of, right? So for me, that's basically kind of kids, students, academia, and maybe us, basically. And let's maybe actually start with us in the IT area, right? So what would be your recommendations for people in IT or people who are somehow have I would say maybe a desk job, right? And to typically work with computers. Um, how do we stay ahead of the curve? I mean, I'm really curious about your answer now. Is there anything else that we should do other than basically just simply trying out everything? Or do you have a better
That
recommendation here?
that is the best I found. The
Okay.
more we use it, the
Yeah.
the the better we get at using it, and the more we talk about using it as well. It helps. Like certainly in my office, we're all using agents to assist with the day job of software development, and
Mhm.
as we get, it's starting to formalize. Uh, we started off, we were all writing our own prompts, and you would find prompts that worked well, and then you would share that with your colleagues of, oh, I asked it in this way and this helped. And then you've seen in recent months, we've started formalizing that as an industry. We start talking about skills, which is just a text
Mhm.
file with a prompt that worked quite well before.
Yeah.
But that gave us an artifact that we could share. So you would write a skill that worked really well for you, you share it. So you start building up a collection of tips and tricks.
Yeah.
But we are all learning. Like it's kind of I'm better at using these tools today than I
Mhm.
was even a few months ago. I hope I will be better in months to come. This stuff is progressing so fast.
Yeah.
And that's definitely one of the challenges that I guess everybody here is facing. We all spend a lot of time trying these tools, working with LLMs, with the latest products that come out from our own company, from other companies, from the market is spinning so quickly that feels random to me, like playing around with that. Is there any better approach just to spend random time? Is there anything you feel you could do, one could do to direct this a little bit, to invest more or less time and to make the best out of that rather than playing random things?
I think, like I say, sort of the more we share and talk about our experiences, the better, just so that we're not all reinventing the same wheels. So, I learned from my colleagues who tell me this approach works really well or this approach doesn't, so that we can accelerate how quickly we can pick up this. But even with that, I do think there's no substitute for that first-hand experience.
Yeah.
The downside of that is your experiences are invalid so quickly. Things that I tried out, say, before Christmas that an agent couldn't do. And if I just kept with that intuition of agents can't do that, that's not true anymore. Like, there are things that are possible today that weren't possible 6 months ago. Like, that makes it really hard to keep that mental model of what these tools are good at and how to use them.
It almost feels like you're on a vacation, come back, and the whole topic has changed, actually, right? I mean, just skills, for example, right? I mean, skills definitely didn't exist at the beginning of this year, right? They just became a topic recently. I mean, you probably could have had a skill at that point in time, but it just formalized over the last couple of weeks, actually, right? So
I do remember when we did a Labs Talk episode on MCP servers, and we did start that episode. We started the moderation. We were talking like MCP servers are the new hot thing, and
the
it's going
next
to
big thing.
revolutionize. That was like something like August last year. That's not even a year ago, and
It's crazy.
those are all over the place now. Yeah.
And a year ago, it was RAG. The language models are never going to have a big enough context. So we need to be able to selectively pick relevant stuff to seed the context with. Now, a year ago, everyone was building RAG pipelines. Now there's the pendulum has swung the other way. People are talking about maybe we don't need to do that. Maybe we can put everything in context. So yeah, it's challenging to keep up.
But I mean, if I understand it correctly, then it's also to some degree, it's fine to sometimes feel lost and a bit overwhelmed, because I guess it's part of the game, right? It's part of this very rapidly developing AI game, and it's okay. But the important thing is to keep doing something, basically, right? And keep using technology. And I mean, for me personally, actually, what I also found very interesting, you can ask the AI, right? So if you're in Claude, basically, or so, and you don't know how to do things, you don't know what a skill is, you can just ask it, actually. And
I
to
think
some degree, it's really cool, right? Because you can do ask anything now. I'm just wondering if I'm blindly trusting it, and what might have been wrong already and what was right.
I did work with Gemini AI Studio, and like on the front page of their app gallery is example to create a video podcast. Here we are.
Yeah.
But that idea of asking the models how to more effectively use the models does work quite well. Like, I quite regularly, where I'm debugging a problem and I asked the question and the answer I got was wrong, so I had to correct. It was still wrong. I go around that loop a bunch of times. When I finish that task, the last thing I'll ask the model is, now that we've worked out what the answer is, what could I have done better? If I'd asked the question in, what way to start with would have got us there. And sometimes you get really useful insights of, it's because you said this that it made me misunderstand. It was because of this. If you'd explained the problem in this way, the response would have been right sooner. So that idea of using the models to help you iterate on how you use the models actually seems to work quite well.
That's very cool. It's a good piece of advice, I think, yeah. So don't be shy and just ask the model directly. Should we talk a bit about academia and how it changes that part of this planet, basically?
Let's maybe make it a bit of a conversation of how LLMs will influence and how individual people and roles will contribute and benefit from the technology, and to start that with academia. I mean, that's where lots and lots of that technology comes from. But there's also students that learn, like we all do these days.
So for me, the simplest question, and you can actually, Andreas, you can ask the more complex things you have in mind, I believe. But for me, the very simple question is someone in computer science, for example, who has to kind of, I don't know, code a database schema for an airport, whatever, right? Or for a flight system or so. So what's the meaning of this, basically, right? Because you can just ask, you can just prompt it from Claude, and you will get this schema done in seconds, basically. So should you rather focus on proper prompting, basically, and working with these AI tools, or does it actually make sense to learn about database schemas and programming languages and algorithms these days? Is that still meaningful, basically? That would be the lowest level. Sorry, the easiest question for me, actually. And then you can start with the crazy stuff, Andreas. What do you think, Dale?
The models are very good at reproducing common tasks, things that have been done a lot. So when you look at the kinds of things we ask students to do in education, they are almost by definition really common tasks, like you say, database setup or whatever sort of thing. So models are capable of doing the kinds of tasks that we have traditionally asked students to do. That is a problem, particularly at younger. I mean, I work with very young, schools, what we call primary education, so up to age 11 in the UK is where I spend the most. And certainly the kinds of questions that those schools are asking children, language models can do almost all of them. So it does pose a challenge for education of how do you instill the ethos that we still need to think. That the difference between people who use AI well and who use it badly are the people who use it to help them versus using AI to do their thinking for them.
Yeah.
That gets easier as you get into older, where the more advanced the education or the tasks that people are doing, they have to provide more input. But in an education setting where you're asking them where traditionally education tasks have asked students to reproduce relatively simple things, it is hard. I see schools adopting. It is challenging for the education sector. So the most common reaction is you ban it. You stop. You try and find ways to prevent students from being able to access it, because then you've closed that risk. That doesn't feel right to me. But equally, like what you were saying of, well, do we just teach people how to use the AI? That doesn't feel like the right answer either. I mean, I think that should be a part of it. We do want students to learn how to use these tools, but that can't be instead of learning
and
the
what
stuff for
I
themselves.
think what we shouldn't forget is that we also, and just quickly, we make ourselves very dependent, right? So if we completely rely on the AI and just, sorry, I don't want to argue now from this whatever European or whatever part of this world perspective or so, right? But pretty much all the AI models somehow live in the US, for example, right now. There's maybe Mistral in Europe here, right? So I think we also would become dependent, like we are dependent on oil, for example, right? We're dependent on AI, LLM access, and so I'm wondering. Yeah, so I liked what you just said. I don't stop thinking, basically. That's very important.
The one thing that I tried to say was we spend a lot of time with our kids to tell them to learn how to learn. And something I didn't definitely show to my daughter, but she figured out by herself when we sit over physics and chemistry. The other day she showed me, hey, Dad, if you don't know that, here is the answer to this question that Gemini gave me. And she didn't use it to do her homework, at least as far as I understood that. But she literally had this conversation with that LLM to help her understand the problem and figure out the answer herself.
Yeah.
Which, if that's true, I think is a good approach.
Used correctly, I think they can be fantastic. An agent is infinitely patient. If you still don't understand something after the sixth time it's explained it to you, it's not going to get annoyed with you. It will keep generating new and different descriptions as long as you say, you can keep asking it. I don't understand that. Explain it to me in a different way. In a way that teachers don't have the time and resource to give that level of individual support to every student. So it does have potential to be a tremendous educational tool, but it also has the potential to encourage a laziness in thinking and in attitude and in approach. So it's how do we keep kids on the helpful side of that?
Mhm.
And we do, it's not just a student thing. We all get dependent on tools very quickly. Like when I started out in computing, man pages were how you found out everything. And then the internet became everywhere. And I remember the first project I did where it was on a closed site. So we didn't have internet access because it was a secure project. And taking Stack Overflow away from me suddenly made me realize sort of how bad I was at diagnosing problems without it. So the same will happen with these models. We will naturally become dependent on them to the extent where if you took them away, we will suddenly feel that, oh, this is difficult.
Very true. With that, shall we move forward in those topics, like the society, education type of perspective, like this? I think we can agree on that we'll all become dependent on these models, but how do we deal with that going forward? How does that shape society? One, like, do you have a perspective on that, working with kids that grow up to this technology nowadays?
I think the point where we are now is as easy as it will ever be because the technology is still early enough that you can recognize it, that you can spot it. We see slop has been adopted as the catch-all term for poor quality output from AI. And you can tell when someone is just presenting content from AI that they haven't really put a lot of effort or thought into. And I see, particularly amongst young people, a pushback on that. Kids describe something as that's AI, that's so AI, as a way of describing that is poor quality. That is,
okay.
It is
Interesting.
And that's, which is quite unusual. Like normally with a new technology, it is the younger generation that is embracing it. And it's the older generation that's more skeptical and more cynical and standoffish. Whereas with AI, I do see that it's more my generation that is enthusiastically adopting it with gusto. There's more of a pushback from my kids' generation and younger.
Interesting.
I like that skepticism. I think that cynicism is probably a healthy thing.
Yeah. I find it interesting. Yeah. So that's a really interesting finding, I would say, right? So I'm just trying to look into my kids actually, and to some other kids that I know, and I hope they're basically being raised in this awareness of it's just a computer and not a human being, and it can go wrong, basically, right? And be skeptical about the output. That sounds good to me. I was also wondering actually if you could give some advice on, because I mean, from the beginning of time till now, basically, we try to educate people and kids, basically, right? And at some point you need to make a decision, what do you still educate and spend time on, and what not, basically, right? What is too basic because it's built into whatever, every calculator. So you don't need to teach it anymore. So with the rise of Gen AI, where would you draw that line when it comes to computer science now again, basically? So I mentioned the algorithms and stuff before. So what do you think is necessary, and what could we actually just, well, not spend so much time on?
It's difficult to know. I mean, my experience with these models is when you're trying to ask them to help solve a complex problem, their first theory is almost never correct.
Mm-hmm.
But it will be presented with confidence as if it is fact.
Yeah.
And a knowledgeable, experienced engineer will look at that answer and go, I know that's not right because of this, and will push back. And then the agent will come up with another theory. And maybe that one will look more plausible, but the experienced engineer will know, well, I need to test that. So I need to go and look for evidence. And that evidence potentially will disprove that theory. And you go around that loop and eventually you find the answer. I don't know how the human can serve that role without the knowledge to underpin it. If you just delegate all your thinking and you don't learn those foundational building blocks, if you don't have them in your head, then you would have to just accept what the AI gives you every time. So we still need to know this stuff, at least today. I mean, it's really hard to make predictions with AI. Is that still going to be the case in a year, 5 years? Who knows? But today, it is essential to have that knowledge to be effective with it. You can't depend on the agent getting everything right.
Yeah, it's the one thing also to know about this, and now the three of us recording here right now, it's great that we know about it, and maybe people who are watching this, right? But if you look a little bit into the future, I mean, realistically, who cares about it, basically, right? And who really just takes the answers from Gemini and Co, basically, and puts it into the next email. So trying to leave us here with a positive outlook, but it's getting tougher, to be honest with you. So I mean, but okay, let's go. Let's talk a bit about the future, and let's wrap it up, basically. So how do you still see the future, though? So I didn't want to paint you too negatively now, basically, but what's how do you see it? And it's also exciting, right? I'm also excited about all these cool things that are coming my way, and we can try it out, of course. What do you think will develop? What will happen, basically, to this whole space in a year from now, and what can we learn from this, basically?
I'm still positive about it I think I see how much it is accelerating us. We can create things in hours that used to take days or weeks. We can create things in days that used to take weeks or months. That ability to iterate quickly, it's things that wouldn't have been viable before are now possible. Like, it's moved the boundaries of what's worth doing, what is feasible. You can try out an idea very quickly. And that opens up possibilities. So I do think it's exciting. There's risks, absolutely, but it's going to allow us to do things we couldn't do before. And I think that's really exciting.
Very cool.
Okay, awesome.
Perfect. Andreas, any more questions, or did we?
No, I think that's really a note we can close on.
I think we should leave it with that, right? The future is bright.
There's exciting opportunities and the future is bright. And with that, Dale, I guess it's time to thank you for the conversation and your experience and to share that with us.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Appreciate it.
Awesome. Thanks for having me.
Yeah. And the next video podcast will be generated, most likely. No. All right. Thanks so much. Bye-bye.